$72 for the boat ride over there. $70 for the ferry. But if you don't do the carriage ride, they won't need no going on this boat.
I got a whole bunch of them on the boat.
So we really got to go over and get our ticket. What time go late?
I got some change.
They come give you everything on the aisle. You got more? There's the aisle. There's the
Bridge,
there's your bridge.
I'm getting it. Getting the dock where we were at.
Come down. Look at the right by the
We know how exciting this is, but we ask that you pay attention to a few quick announcements. Please remain seated until the vessel can be secured to the dock and luggage carts are unloaded. Please watch your step at the stairwells, aisleways, and ramp when going ashore. Please remember to take all of your belongings with you. This includes children, pets, and spouses. Most of you will have purchased round-trip tickets. You must have the same ticket to board the ferry back to the mainland. So be sure to keep that safe for the duration of your trip. If you have luggage aboard and are staying at the Grand Hotel, Mission Point Resort, or Island House, your luggage will be taken directly to your hotel, and you can claim it upon check-in. For those of you staying at one of the other 5 hotels or bed and breakfasts, your luggage will be taken up to the dock at street level. You will need to claim your bags with your hotel's dock porter and arrange delivery to your hotel. While we're docking, let's get your tour of the island started. The building located on the bluff with the gray roof, 3 dormers, and flags flying is our Michigan Governor's summer residence. To the right of that, you can see a long white wall. This is Fort Mackinaw. Off to the left, the majestic white building with the green roof is the world-famous Grand Hotel. And to the right, you'll see the red roofs of Mission Point Resort. Enjoy your stay on the island. Watch your step while going ashore. And please remember to keep your tickets. We'll see you on the return trip.
Yeah, I got it right here. Let me run.
Like loading the tractor trailer across the
Just a minute. I'm busy taking pictures.
How do you like this place?
Good morning, everyone. How are you today, guys? Great. So I'm Christina, and I'm going to be your tour only for the first part. As you can see, we have 2 horses, and their names are horse number 1 and horse number 2. I'm just kidding. We have Luther and Leroy. Can everybody say hi, Luther? Good. Everybody say hello, Leroy. Great. Here on Mackinaw we have only one rule. Horses are more important than us. And believe me, it is true. Okay, so on the right we have the Market Park. In the middle of the park there is a statue who belongs to Jacques Market. Jacques Market was a French missionary who came on this island in early 1600s. It's an interesting rumor about the statue because the guy who made it didn't have an idea about Jacques looked like. So he decided to put his face at the mustache, and that's it. A really smart guy.
Yeah, there's the.
Only 2 horsepower here. Come on, horses. You can do it. On the right, we have the Dr. William Bowman Museum. Dr. Bowman came here in early 1800s, who actually was very fortunate for a traveler whose name was Sir Alexis Martin, who actually wasn't the brightest. And I'm saying that because by accident, Martin got shot himself in the stomach. Likely, the doctor was able to save his life, and in return, Martin agreed to be his guinea pig. Dr. William made over 200 experiments on Martin's body, which I know is crazy, but in the same time, in the medical field, big discoveries were made in the digestive process. On the right, you can see the Mackinaw Island post office, which is quite unique because it has never delivered a single piece of mail. So you have to come and pick up your own delivery. On the right, you can see two white buildings are called the storehouse and community hall. These two buildings were owned by John Jacob Astor. He was the first made millionaire in America. He traded over $3 million in bar trading business, which is the equivalent of about $50 million today. We have the police department on the right, and behind is the garage where we keep our little secret weapons. We have emergency vehicles, and I am talking about real cars, no need for this. Here on the right, it is the most important building on this island because I live here. It's called Linux, and it used to be the Chicago Hotel. We have the Benjamin Blacksmith shop. They used to make our horsey shoes. Now they only do demonstrations. The bigger house on the right, it is the oldest house on this island, dating back to 1780, and the price was around $100 a long time ago. On the left, you can see a unique strip mall because it's the only one that has no pawn shops. The island has around 16 pawn shops and they offer free samples. If you collect and eat them, it will be around £1.50. I think in this case you should go and visit the building on the right, which is the medical center. Please keep in mind that we have 500 residents and only one doctor. Here you have to plan your emergencies. On the left, you can see two green buildings. It used to be the Windsor and the Twilight hotels. Actually, this corner is the most haunted one because on the third floor there is a room. Wherever you put a bed, no matter how you position it, the ceiling above it is going to leak. Something or maybe someone doesn't want you sleeping there. Nowadays, these two buildings are owned by the largest employer on this island, the Grand Hotel. Has around 700 employees, foreign and students just like me.
This one's a little lazy.
Yeah, I told you. On the right, you can see the chamber stables. Are the oldest stables on this island. It used to be ours, but since we got 5 times bigger, we've just moved up the hill. Now, these stables are used to store the wedding carriages and wedding horses because each season are around 300 weddings. I think there is too much love on Mackinaw Island.
So much love.
This street is called the Lilac Lane. The island offers a wide variety of lilac imported from France. And now I will show you the oldest lilac tree. It's over 170 years. In fact, you will show me which one do you think is it, on the left or on the right side? It's on the left, yeah. Next to the lilac tree, we have the Grand Carriage. This house was owned by William Jacob Astor, the son of the first made millionaire. Actually, John was so afraid of water that he didn't put a foot here. In order to manage all the business, he decided to send his son William. Ironically, the John great-grandson died of the Titanic. He He was the richest man on the board, and he went down with the ship. Now, if you're interested in becoming a professional driver just like me, I invite you to go to the Jake stable on the left. They'll give you training for about 10 to 20 minutes, a map, and that's it. You can drive a carriage by yourself. Guys, I wish you luck.
We did that once in the year. We went one way and one way.
Two of the Grand Hotel restaurants are on the left side. Here, the food is so delicious and the prices are quite spicy.
Raspberry, yeah. They still feel raspberry for months. Oh, look at that. Look at this pretty.
This is pretty.
Oh, isn't it?
Beautiful.
On the right, you can see the little stone church. It was built in 1904 and it is entirely made of stone quarried from the island. The windows are covered in plexiglass because someone was smart enough to place a golf course next to the church. The church hosts the majority of the weddings and all the profits go to the Mackinaw Island Public School, that brick building on the left side covered by the trees. We have around 80 students from the kindergarten to the 12th grade.
Like 80 students in their school.
On the left, you can see the Mackinaw Bridge. It was built between 1954 and 1957, has a distance of 5.2 miles and represents the largest suspension in the Western Hemisphere. Now, please pay attention on the right side because right after these trees, after the hill, you can see a grandiose white building out there. That building is mine.
That building is yours.
Yeah, in my dreams.
She said, see that white building, it's hers.
It is the governor's summer residence. It was built in 1902 by a really wealthy Chicago attorney. And the cost of construction was $15,000. Unfortunately, he went bankrupt. And he had to sell the building to the state of Michigan with the same cost. Nowadays, I don't think that the state is going to sell anything soon because they are building worth around $5 million.
That one or all of them? Each one of them?
The one.
We'll come back around.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, please prepare your camera for the most iconic landmark on the Mackinaw Island. In the middle, we have the pineapple statue. And of course, behind you can see the Grand Hotel. They put a pineapple statue because it represents an hospitality sign. Now, if you look at the Grand, you will see that the ceilings on the balconies are painted in blue. Does anybody know why are painted in blue? Because birds, insects, and spiders think that they are nearby the sky, so they won't make any nest there. A smart idea indeed.
The birds and insects. I'll just interpret as she goes.
Now, during the trip, I'll make a few stops just to rest the horses, and I will talk about the Grand. It originally had 180 rooms. It was built in 1887 by 3 companies. And they were in hurry because all the rooms were booked before even beginning the construction. Now, let's play a game. In how many days do you think they built the Grand? I will give you a hint, it's more than 1 day. Let's see how many days.
3 years.
Less.
2 years.
Less than 2 years.
1 year.
Less than 1 year.
100
6
days.
months.
Less than 100 days.
This whole thing in less
Only 180 rooms.
50.
More than 50.
75.
More than 75.
82.
More than 82.
90.
More than 90.
99.
Less than 99.
90.
More than 90.
95.
Less than 95. Less than 94.
91.
More than 91.
92.
More than 92.
93.
93. We have a winner. Yoo-hoo, eventually. And because we have a winner, I also have a reward for you, ma'am, which is more like an invitation. So tomorrow in the morning, I will wait for you in the barn so you can actually hear me cleaning the horse poop.
How many rooms do you
It will
have?
be great, I assure you about that. 385 rooms.
How much does a room cost?
I think about 800 per night. Okay.
Probably for the
So,
seaside.
you know, so it was built in 93 days. And with about 600 workers, they worked in really hard conditions and everything was for nothing. Because they've been in late with 3 days. They lost the bonus. They didn't receive anything. Now, the Grand has 385 rooms. Each room is uniquely decorated. If you stay here for about 1 year, you will have a great experience and an empty wallet. 6 of the rooms were decorated by first ladies. More than that, 2 famous movies were filmed here. Does anybody know them?
Yeah, somewhere in time.
Somewhere in Time. It was filmed in 1980, and each year they celebrate the movie with a great party of the Grand. And the second one?
Superman.
No one? In the back, no one? Let's go then.
You don't know either, huh?
Maybe Somewhere in Time too? No, it's an old movie. It was filmed in 1946 with Jimmy Durante, this time for kids. And actually, the pool of the Grand was especially built for that movie.
Somewhere in time is this part of
So are all these just coming from the stadium? All these empty
Yeah,
carriages?
I will show you.
Switch out?
Yeah. On the left, you can see an uninteresting pile of rubble. So, don't look at that. But before being a pile of rubble, it was the Grand Hotel stable. And they removed it up to the hill. Is that green red building up there? One day, they found a crack on the floor. They investigated and found out that the entire foundation was crumbling. So that's the reason why they removed the stable. I invite you to go and visit because it's free of charge and you can see a variety of carriages dating back to 1700s. More than that, you can see some of the grand horses. Now, does anybody know why we stopped here under the trees?
What is the what?
Shade for the horse.
No.
Butterfly house.
No. Because the horses met here in this place. It's like a romantic spot to them.
Well, that one's got his head down, so he's not real happy.
No, guys, it isn't. Because on the right side there is a golf course. So if a ball will touch my horses, this carriage will just fly up to the same hill, which is the final destination point. But as you can see, only the horses are protected. The carriage, not at all. rule number one, horses are more important than us. I told you, you didn't believe me. Come on, horses. This hill is called the Grand Hill, and if you go down with a bike that has no brakes, you can reach up to 50 miles an hour. But don't do that, because it's illegal. Here, the speed limit is only 25 miles. Because nothing interesting is happening on Mackinaw, a police officer will have enough time to wait for you down to the hill with a ticket of $100.
I go here on the right.
He said a couple hours.
Now, how many doctors do we have for the 500 residents?
One.
One. Well, our company has 350 horses at Special Ferry in Pickford, Michigan Upper Peninsula, where they will stay for about 6 months. After that, they will come back and start exercising because, in fact, working will double their lifespan. A horse that works can live up to 40 years, and a lazy one who is just eating and pooping all day long will get fat and eventually die of a heart attack in their 20s. So actually this activity is good for them. They work 4 to 5 hours and we switch the teams twice per day. A few days ago, Luther lost his shoe, and this is my lucky shoe. If you want, you can take a look. It's pretty heavy. We change their shoes once a 5 weeks. Will take around 10 to 15 minutes for each foot and is not painful at all. Yes.
Pass it back.
Here on Mackinaw we have 3 types of horses. Drop horses in front of us are Belgium. Riding horses
I don't.
mixed between
No, you can
them.
pass it back.
Here are our stables. The first one is called the taxi barn. Here we keep the horses for the taxi service. The taxi horses are the smallest one and weigh around 1,600 pounds. The drop horses weigh around 2,000 pounds and they can pull 2 to 3 times their weight. Now, if you look on the right side in the back, you can see a green-white carriage. That one is the largest in the world, has 35 seats, and is pulled by 3 big horses, which you'll see in the second part of the tour, where I am not going to be there because the second one is just boring. Here, the smell is amazing. I think it comes from the cookery. In the middle, we have the middle part. Here, we keep the horses for the second part of the tour, are the biggest ones and weigh around 2,600 pounds. My lazy boys live in the big barn. Here, I have to come every single morning. I have to brush my horses, to harness them, and eventually to wash them because some of them really enjoy sleeping in their own poop.
Now, these are private homes.
On the right side, in the back, is where we wash them. Excuse me, what?
These private homes.
These are for employees.
Do you live there?
No, I live in the downtown.
She showed us.
Building their cottages on the state park land, and they lease that land from the state park. It's 10-year renewable leases, okay? Come on, guys, get up around there. Now, over here on the left is a Protestant cemetery. We usually don't divide our cemeteries by denominations or faith here in our country. So I might as well go ahead and point out that that Protestant cemetery wall right there is a lot holier than the Catholic. The oldest grave here is dated 1831, okay? That'd be the grave of Harriet Mitchell. Harriet lived to be 81 back then, so that means she was born in 1750, okay? There's also a governor buried here. That'd be G. Menon Williams. He spent a lot of time on the island and was very helpful with some of the historic preservation here on the island. This cemetery here is a national military cemetery. They know there's 109 graves in there, and they only know of 38 of them. So they fly that flag at half staff 365 days a year in honor of the fallen soldiers, okay? This is one of 5 national military cemeteries that fly their flag that way. Does anyone know of any of the others? No? Arlington is one, that is correct. Another one would be in Pennsylvania, starts with a G. Gettysburg. The other one's in Hawaii. Pearl Harbor. The other one's in France. Normandy. So it's Normandy, Pearl Harbor, Gettysburg, Arlington, and Mackinaw. Those are the only 5 that do that. Now, in 1763 was the French and Indian War, and the Indians were closely allied with the French, or good buddies with the French. And over there in Mackinaw City at Fort Mackinaw, the British had control of that fort at that time. Well, this was important to the natives, and they're rather proud of it today. But they were able to defeat King George's army when it was the strongest army in the world at that time, okay? And what the natives did, they played a game similar to lacrosse right outside the fort. And they acted like they accidentally threw the ball into the fort. Well, the British were all uptight about that. But as the game went on, they did it a second time. By the third time, the British had relaxed and dropped their guard. And that's when the natives surprised attacked them, massacred the British, and had their victory over King George's army. Well, at the same time, there was a native man by the name of Wawatam who had developed a close friendship with a British individual by the name of Alexander Henry. And Wawatam had knowledge of that forthcoming attack over there, and he didn't want his newfound friend to be caught up in the middle of the conflict. So what he did is he brought Alexander over here to the island to hide him, okay? And he hid Alexander right up here in this cave on the left. He put Alexander in there at night. Alexander thought he was sleeping on sticks and stones, but he was actually sleeping on skulls and bones. This is called Skull Cave today. The mouth of it is dynamited closed, it being an ancestral burial site, but that is Skull Cave right there. Now, in 1776 was the first Revolutionary War, and that lasted 7 years till 1783. And even though the U.S. had won that war, the British remained over here in Fort Mackinaw for another 13 years, okay? And the reason being was the U.S. simply didn't have the forces to bring up to this remote fort's location. Number of years would go by, like 40 plus years. There was another war here on the island. That was the War of 1812. And by that time, and that's also known as the Second Revolutionary War, but by that time there were 60 U.S. soldiers in the fort over here under Lieutenant Commander Hanks, okay? And Commander Hanks had no knowledge of the war even starting. Nobody had gotten word to him up here, all right? And over here on the north end of the island, they call it British Landing today, 600 British soldiers showed up. Well, Commander Hanks had no choice but to surrender the fort and the soldiers without a shot being fired. It wouldn't be until 2 years later, in 1814, when the Americans would return and they attempt 3 times to regain possession of this island. The first thing they try, like the British, the element of surprise, it was no surprise, okay? The second thing they tried to do was they tried to fire their cannons up at the fort on the bluff, and they couldn't elevate their cannons high enough to get cannon fire up there. And then the third thing they tried was they tried a naval blockade to block British supplies from coming into the fort, and the British ended up capturing 2 of their ships. All right? So all 3 attempts had failed at that time, but it would be 2 years later, in 1816, when the Americans would win the war and through the Treaty of Ghent regain possession of this island. Now down there is Fort Mackinaw, and beyond that is the lake. And the fort's sitting about 270 feet off the water right there. Well, right up here, you can't see it here. I'll point it out to you later. There's another smaller fort that's right up here on top of the island. That's about 375 off the water. Now, when the British were here, they called that fort Fort George in honor of the king. When the U.S. returned, they renamed it to Fort Holmes in honor of an officer that had fallen in one of the 3 attempts. They call that a military redoubt up there. You'd have soldiers in the fort, you'd have soldiers about the island. If these soldiers out here in the field were attacked in a manner as such where they needed to retreat, they'd go to the smaller fort with the greatest degree of observation. This was also the rifle range here. The soldiers would come out here and practice their marksmanship twice a week, trying to be proficient at hitting targets at 600 yards, okay? Yeah, a new weapon came out. That was the 45-70 Springfield rifle. This was now a breech-loaded gun where you put the bullets in the back of the barrel rather than the top. What that afforded, come on guys, what that afforded the military was now they could deliver firepower in much more rapid succession than they ever could before, all right? So a big advancement in military warfare. Now, this island is very important to the natives. They believe that they were created here. They believe that this is the center of their being. They do not believe that they migrated here from Asia, okay? This is the tallest island around. Has a contour somewhat of a turtle. The name Mackinaw means great turtle. So when you're about the island today, you may see symbols of turtles. That's what they're referencing, okay? Now these were woodland Indians opposed to plains Indians, and they were known for their expertise in beaver trapping, okay? Beaver hats were popular in Europe for a while, along with the castoreum from the beaver gland being in demand. But we know that John Jacob Astor had 15 years of prosperity in the fur trading from 1820 to 1835. Prior to that, it was all Canadian-dominated, the fur trading. But John did very well. He had a trading post. He would trade various commodities, guns, coffee, knives, blankets, etc. for furs, all right? But he also extended a line of credit to the fur trappers. Well, over time, in a 200-mile radius, the fur-bearing animals became depleted. The natives slowly acquired debt. Initially, that was how their land was obtained. From that point forward, for the natives, it's what's known as forced assimilation in that the young native children were put in a dormitory here on the island. They had to go to school. They had to wear European clothing. They could no longer wear their tribal attire. They were forbidden to speak in their tribal language, all right? I read a letter from a half-breed in a fur trading book, and he said at that time it was better to be a half-breed because you could live more like an Indian than the Indians could. But that has been the plight of Native Americans all throughout our U.S. history. There is one treaty, though, from 1855 that's still in effect today for these tribes in northern Michigan. Excuse me. What that affords them is they have hunting and fishing rights that the general population doesn't have today. Now, what kind of furs would they trade? I would say anything that was furry. From elk to moose and bear and deer and otter and mink and badger and bobcats and lynx and wolves and wolverines and foxes and ferrets and martens and skunks and muskrats and beavers and many, many more, okay? But there was these other guys, everybody thought they were pretty adventuresome. They lived in the wilderness and they trapped and they hunted, but they traveled these wide bodies of water known as the boundary waters, okay? And they would do it in canoes that are 2 to 3 times the size of what we believe a canoe to be today. And those guys are known as voyagers, all right? And these voyagers would travel here for the summer to trade their furs. And lots of times on their journeys here, they would have to portage. Portage means they'd come to land with their canoes. They'd have to carry the contents of their canoes across land, carry their canoes across the land to the next body of water to continue their journeys here. All right? Well, though I was told those big bundles or bales of furs that they would be bringing here, they made them weigh exactly 90 pounds. All right? And the reason being was they wanted to be able to carry them balanced across the land. All right? And even though those guys were pretty tough characters for back in the day, the fact is, in reality, most of them died of hernia. After that, it was the fishing industry. What they did here is they fished for whitefish and lake trout. They fished with nets. They fished out of a boat that has a sail. That boat was designed here on the island, and that design is still known as the Mackinaw today, all right? They would take that fish and salt it down, put it in barrels, and ship it out to the big cities like Cleveland, Chicago, and Detroit. In the middle of the winter, they go out on the lake and they cut big blocks of ice out of there. They take those blocks and put it in an ice house, cover it with sawdust, make it last till the summer when they needed it for the fish. In the peak of the fishing industry here on the island, 300 coopers lived on the island. And a cooper is an individual that builds barrels, and they have record of shipping in excess of 25,000 barrels of fish off the island a year, okay? Now, what brought that all to a close? Well, boats got faster. Boats could start delivering fresh fish to the cities. Everybody preferred the fresh over the preserved. But Mackinaw Island was still too far away, even with the faster boats, to deliver fresh fish. So that brought the fishing industry to a close. Now, one thing they did back then that was pretty neat that you don't see too often anymore is they would use ice boats. And an ice boat is an apparatus that's like an ice skating blade, and it has a sail, and it allows you to sail on the ice. So they could sail back and forth to the mainland or for recreation over the ice. But after fishing, it has been all of you folks ever since. Mackinaw Island has done tremendously well with tourism. On average, 10 to 15,000 people come over here on Ferry 7 days a week from May to October to visit Mackinaw Island. I believe the recipe is horses, history, and fudge. And it seems to work pretty well for them. All right? Now, we have a lot of different trees and flowers here.
Gorgeous.
Let's get him. Let me see if I can.
All right, we gotta head back. He only gave us a few minutes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, I just.
By the Straits of Mackinaw. But they say about 1,000 years ago that those two Great Lakes were one lake. And they call that one lake Lake Algonquin. And they say as Lake Algonquin was slowly receding its waters over hundreds of years there, and the waves were lapping along the shores, there at the arch in the center was a softer rock that eventually was eroded away to give you your current arch formation that you see today. And back there at the rifle range where you saw those terraces going like that, they say that was also created by Lake Algonquin and the water slowly receding. Now, right up here on the hillside to the right, there's a tree right there with a number of holes in it. Those holes are created by a pileated woodpecker. That's a woodpecker that's about a foot tall that looks like woody woodpecker. The round holes are where they're getting insects out of the tree to eat. And the slotted hole, I'm told, is where the bird lives. Now, people ask me about wildlife on the island. We do have probably some deer over here that come across on the ice, but no more than a dozen, all right? And every once in a blue moon, a black bear will swim over here from one of the other islands in the summer. And if they do, the park rangers relocate it or rehome it. There's just too many people and too much fudge on the island for a black bear. Down there, when you're looking at the old lighthouse out there in the water, and you look at that island to the left, that is Round Island, and that's also Hiawatha National Forest. Nobody lives on that island. Okay. But other than that, we just have small game, rabbits, raccoons, squirrels, birds, things of that nature, for the most part. So, no venomous snakes. People ask if we have any snakes like that, but we don't. Okay. I'm going to give these guys a little breather right here because we're pulling about 9. If you build, you're going to have to lease the land, but in addition to that, the outward appearance is going to have to be along the historical architectural styles that are existing on the island. You're not going to see a modern contemporary home on the bluffs of Mackinaw Island, okay? One way that they've been doing it, which is kind of interesting since I've been here, is they actually build modules or sections of it over on the mainland. They put it on a ferry with a crane, bring the crane over and start bringing more sections or modules and assemble it that way. It must be more cost effective than bringing the tradespeople over here every day along with all the raw materials. Anything that's motorized that comes on the island has to go through the city council and the mayor's office. They've had the same mayor for 45 years. That's Margaret Dodge. She's part of the Dodge family that owns the grocery store here in town. There's about 7 major islander families that own the majority of the businesses here on the island. All right. They've always been worried about fires here on the island. Why? We got 1,700 acres of forest, okay? So back in the day, they didn't even have horse-drawn firefighting equipment stationed around the island. These roads that we've been traveling, that the soldiers put in during the National Park Day, they also serve as fire breaks, because they say if a fire got out of control on the island, informative for you. I hope I did some of that, and I do accept tips, and if you choose to tip me, I just want you to know that I'm very grateful and appreciate your generosity. That is a hot-blooded horse right there. That's a Hackney horse right there. Has a great deal of action when you see it travel. Got a lot of energy, those horses. Beautiful animal. That's a marathon cart that they're riding in right there. Is anybody going into Fort? I need to know that in case you guys are. All right. I'll just tell you about the Fort. The admissions is $15.50. All right. It's a very well-preserved fort with a number of great exhibits in there. They have people in period clothing that do demonstrations while you're there. You're going to want to hang on to your fort ticket because that also gets you into 2 museums and a blacksmith shop downtown on Market Street if you're interested in doing that, okay? And I'm trying to get up the road here. I'm stopping here, folks, but I just wanted to get down just a hair down the road. So, okay. Right here, I'm going to stop. Well, if you look up there to the right, now that is Fort Holmes up there that I mentioned before. Can you see it up on the top of the hill? We were just about all the way up there when we were looking down the rifle range, okay?
So that's the opposite
Yeah,
side.
so yep, that's it right there. We're on the other end. There you go, folks, if you're going into the fort.
Thank you.
Yep.